Now that you're the older, professional, black, strong woman, what would you have told your younger person now that you know what you know now?
Man, that is a great question. And I think what I would tell, younger me is really it's going to be okay.
Right there, it would have been a nice time for the drop right here, right here.
We could do this here, watch me rock the flow. Killing it a must, never optional.
Spit guys at the crab table, still ain't signed to a rap label. DVD when I ain't have cable. I got balls, he ain't rap able. A 6D for me is man fatal. Can't see me like a bad angle.
Absolutely, ain't going nowhere. We will be forever and ever and ever.
Peace, 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 beautiful family. This is Dr. Walter Hidalgo, and this is the Know Thy Shelf podcast. The Know Thy Shelf show and podcast utilizes the metaphor of the shelf in order to extrapolate the self. And the way we do that is we invite guests to come in and share something about themselves. And before I introduce my guest, as always, I want to get through this agenda, and I ask folks to check out the website, www.knowthyshelf.tv. There you'll find information about things as coaching, as well as information related to my book. Hip Hop turned 50 last year. Check out my book, Beyond the Four Walls, The Rising Ministry and Spirituality of Hip Hop. If you're looking for workshops for teens and young adults, one of the most popular workshops I give is on the do's and don'ts of social media, living in the matrix. If you're a parent, if you're a young person, you're a school looking to kind of help that young person navigate this uncharted territory that we're all still trying to figure it out, called the internet and social media, definitely give me a shout out. The other thing we always do is I like to give a shout out to a group of individuals. And today I want to give a big shout out to all of my women, all that feminine energy. I'm almost afraid to say that word nowadays, but I'm going to just say the femininity in all of its definition and however you see that. But shout out. I want to give a shout out to all of my coaches. Everybody needs a coach. Even a coach needs a coach. I want to give a shout out to anyone who achieved any level of higher ed, whether that's a master's, a PhD, a JD, a medical degree. Like, shout out to you, because anyone that pursues that, I admire that person. It takes something special inside of you. I want to give a shout out to all my educators, all my teachers, parents, anyone that does any form of education, because I got here somebody that I admire, that I respect, and I'm super honored for the digital world because I got to meet her in such a way. I got here with me, Dr. Loren Hill. What's up, my sister?
Hey there, Dr. Hill. How are you doing? I love all those shout outs. I was like, check. Me.
And if you don't know, for those who've been following the pod and the show, if you notice, part of my research is I use the shout outs to shout out the characteristics that make up the person that I have. You know what I mean? Because there's coaches out there, there's educators out, there's many of you out there, but there's only one you though. So I want to make sure I highlight that. And one of the first things that I do always with our guests is I like to contextualize things, right? So I want to take it back into time. If we were to step into Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, I don't know if you ever seen that movie where they get into that time machine, that phone booth, throwback movie. And if we were to step back into time into a younger Dr. Hill,
yes.
What would we see? What would we hear? What would we smell? Because you are originally from?
I'm from Southern California, LA, baby.
Oh, LA, stand up. Shout out to my LA family, my friends out there. I go to Cali at least once a year for a program that I run in the Bay Area specifically. But shout out to all my West Coasters. Talk to us, Dr. Loren Hill, from your eyes and ears as a young person. How was it growing up in LA?
Well, it was interesting. Let's just put it that way. If we were to look back at what was going on in little Loren's life back in the day, there were a lot of challenges, but there was a lot of love and support. I grew up in a, two-parent home. We were essentially middle class, but through some events that occurred, my parents decided to go their, separate ways. And it really created, a seismic shift in our lives, right? Yeah. And we had to move to a whole different area. We ended up going to some different schools, and I was shook, right? Yeah. And what ended up happening, though, is I found support in a very unlikely place, and that was the school psychologist. My parents were like, maybe you should talk to somebody. And there was a school psychologist on campus, and I did. And the reason it was rather unlikely was that at that time I was going to a school that, there were just a handful of minorities there. And the school psychologist was a white guy. And I was like, what would he know? But he really heard me, Dr. Hidalgo. I mean, he heard me. And up until that time, I thought I was going to follow in the footsteps of some of the other women in my family who were doctors or attorneys and medical doctors, I should say. And I, came home and announced to my family that I wanted to be a psychologist. And they were like, wait, what? No, we don't do that, right? Those of us with a particular type of melanin in our skin don't go to the psychologist regularly. It's like, okay, we sent you to the school psychologist, but it is totally, we're not going to talk to, a shrink about what's going on. So it was a bit of a challenge, right? Even though I came from a family who was all about education and all about careers, it was a bit of a battle for me to advocate for going into mental health and behavioral health. So that was Loren, right? That was little Loren. All the while, like you mentioned at the opening of your show, listening to hip hop and getting my feed, culturally that way, and just going through life, as a adolescent, as a teenager, as a young adult, and really trying to find my voice and find my footing.
And wow, it's so beautiful, man. I'm hearing this and it's like, so I don't want to get into the therapizing you or assuming I'm not a therapist. I'm a sociotheologian. I'm a different, but hey, theology, psychology, two sides of the same coin, I believe. Absolutely. And it's so to the extent of what you want to share, it almost seems like you gave me a little alley-oop. Did the role of what happened in family was what kind of pushed? Yeah, you get where I'm going.
Of course.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I think that, people will share to the extent that they feel comfortable, but I have no problem saying that, going to the school psychologist helped me really unpack some things that I couldn't talk about at home, right? Yes. I remember telling my parents, like, you don't understand what it's like to be one of like 3 Black kids in an all-white gifted school. Yes. Like, you don't get it, right? Yes. And they weren't trying to hear that. They were like, get to class, get your grades, all of that other stuff is essentially noise. And so there was this anxiety about having to perform and being one of the only and being what we would now call like, hyper visible. And I remember an incident where our AP English teacher singled me out and said that I was, you know, super chatty, and sent me home with a note to my parents. And, you know, back then they were all about, well, the teacher said it, so it must be true. You know how that was.
Yep.
And I was like, before you start to beat me up and, you know, like tell me like, no, what's wrong with you? I mean, like not physically beat me up, but like, you know, come for me. How about, who am I going to talk to? I'm the only Black kid in that class.
Yeah. Yes.
They don't want to talk to me, and I don't know how to talk to them. But they were like, well, figure it out. So it was those types of things where, okay, obviously I can't talk to my parents about this, but being able to talk to the school psychologist about, you know, isolation and essentially being the other, these types of things, that he did speak to me in a very age appropriate way. But really what it came down to was this tension and anxiety, right? About being the other in this area where you are hyper visible, and what that does to you, right? So traveling between two worlds, right? Now we call it code switching, right? So
yeah,
that whole, you know, not being able to talk to mom and dad at home about what's going on at school, but being able to talk to one person in particular about what I was going through, and him helping me make sense of that, just changed me. I was like, oh, there's a place that is safe that you can talk to about whatever's going on with you. And it's not like, oh, you know, take it to the Lord, or we don't want to hear that little kid, you know, kids are seen and not, all of that kind of stuff we used to kind of go through. So it really did set my feet on a path of like, there's gotta be other kids that will go through this at some point in their life. And I would sure like to be the person that they see that looks like them,
yes,
that can relate, right? Yeah. So it definitely helped me. And then as I, you know, got older, and then there's other family dynamics and drama, which all families have it, right? Whether they want to admit to it or not. Being able to sit in class and think of like, oh, this is why this is happening, right? These are some of the dynamics. And not that I'm going to be able to fix or therapize or, you know, do anything like that with my family, but helping myself understand what's really going on. And, you know, let's just put it out there. You know, psychologist was not made for people with melanin in their skin. Let me just say that, right? However, it has evolved over time with BIPOC people. I mean, one of my mentors who has gone to the mat for me when I was in higher ed was Dr. Patricia Arredondo. And she is one of the, you know, preeminent Hispanic and now Latinx psychologists. Like, she's one of the founding mothers of that. Yes. And so it has evolved, and there are places, you know, in the field where we can grow, learn, and go from this, like, always, you know, this hyper survival mode into thriving mode.
Yes, yes. And you know, Dr. Hill, I'm loving everything you're saying. It's so important. And it just reminds me, you know, I was having a conversation with my cousin saying that everybody needs therapy, man. You need an objective outsider just to let you know, that to keep you on track, you know. I even done, I know you're familiar with the genogram. I've done the genogram with myself. Oh my God, has that opened up my eyes with a lot of things, you know? Oh, and you know, a big part, you know, it's interesting. I always tell people, you know, like, a big part of me did feel like I should have done psychology, because I read up on psychology a lot, you know, just to help my own sanity. And I guess that's the question I have for you now. I don't know if anyone's ever asked you, if you were to sit, like, now that you're the older professional Black strong woman, what would you have told your younger person now that you know what you know now?
Man, that is a great question. And I think what I would tell, younger me is really it's going to be okay. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be okay. And, I never really saw myself as what some people would call like, the talented 10th, or, you've heard that phrase
Yes.
before. But now I kind of get it, right? Because the challenge is when you've been given these gifts and then you move into that space of using them, that's what sets you apart, right? So over my, career, I've been in different spaces doing different things, and I've been an educator. I've been, in higher ed for over 30 years in one form or another, even been an administrator, department chair, program chair. And so I've had parallels, right? So behavioral health, which is me being a clinical psychologist, doing therapy, then doing trauma work, then ultimately now what I do is neurodevelopmental testing and assessing. And so what I have been able to do, Dr. Hidalgo, is really be led, right? And so what are those like subtle messages that I'm getting that say, go this way, or look into that and move over here, or I know you never thought about this job before. And in fact, that job never existed. But if you show up in that space, there will be something created for you. And when I've been in those areas, the talent, if you will, is reading the room, identifying the opportunities to make room at the table for others, right? So when I was a department chair, I was like, this place don't look really brown enough for me. But we're recruiting a bunch of students who are brown, right? Across the hue. So why don't we get some more faculty in here that students can see themselves in? And I think, as you know, a lot of times what happens is students will go into a university or a college, they've been recruited hard, but then they don't see anybody who looks like them.
Yeah.
They may see one or two other students, but there's no faculty, staff, administrators. There's no one they can go to when they feel alone, right? Mm-hmm. And so many times in my office, I would just have my door open and any student of color could come in. And what ended up happening was word got out on campus, right? Oh, go see Dr. Hill. She'll help you with your dissertation, or go see Dr. Hill. She'll make sure that, you have your paperwork in order. Go see Dr. Hill. She'll hook you up with Dr. So-and-so, right? Yeah. And those were not written into my job description, but they were opportunities for me to help support students who might have dropped out, stopped out, etc. And we need to be there. We need students, we need faculty, we need staff, we need administrators. Same in mental health. We need students, we need, trainees, we need trainers, we need you there. And so part of this task, because, I have other colleagues who they're like, look, I'm getting my check and I'm going home, right? Yeah. Okay, you made it. But what are you doing to help with legacy and lineage? So I think that's where if I were to kind of say like, okay, I get it. Maybe I am part of that. Maybe I am.
Yeah, and I'm hearing you in this, and I'm thinking of a friend. I won't mention his name. He was. Oh man, I hate these terms. Forgive me, Dr. Hill. People of color. I don't like how people box us in, but just for the sake, he was that, and he was about 95% almost done with his PhD. But because of all that you said and not getting that support, he dropped out and he moved. He was in New York. I think he was studying here at Teachers College, and then moved back to Chicago. And I was like, oh my God, dude, I was hurt, but I also understand. I think it is important, and I think about that myself. The good thing with my cohort, we actually the people of color were the majority, so that's what helped me out in my case, I think. So I thank God for that. But I also,
and that's rare. That's rare.
super. It wasn't that case for my master's and below. Like I went to Northeastern University for my undergrad, and it was super like culture shock for me. Master's through culture shock. And like I felt comfort and solace in seeing someone that looked or talked like me. It just, the level of anxiety went down. And I think that's why, like I mentioned a lot with hip hop, because that sometimes is what breaks a lot of these cultural and phenotype barriers that we place on each other. Hip hop, higher infinite power, healing our people. Our communities have been talking a lot about healing, Dr. Hill. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen. There's gun violence. There is social media is just people are looking for these dopamine shots, likes, right? I'm throwing a very broad stroke question, and I'm really asking you, how do we heal? What's one or two? They're just simple things based on your work and what you've seen. How does one heal thyself?
So if I knew the answer to that question,
I would be healed.
Yes, I would be healed. My work would be done, and maybe yours would be. But I think, it's a great question to continually ask, right? You ask each other, ask yourself, because answers can come. And the answers are different for each individual. But one of the things that I can say, because I have been asked this question before, is start with doing some quiet time, right? Yeah. There's so much noise, social media or news, or you walk outside, and we have unfortunately been conditioned to gravitate towards the drama or the negative. I remember years ago when I was in undergraduate, I was taking a sociology class, and one of my professors just forbade us from watching the news for the entire term that we were in his class. And that was really provocative. Like my family, part of what we did growing up was we watched the evening news, and we had to sit at the dinner table and report, right? We had to give our own ideas about why this was happening in this place of the world. And we specifically watched world news, right? The evening news. I think it was, I can't remember who led it back then, but it wasn't local news. It was world news. So we had to think critically about why these stories were presented, what we might do to offer some type of, different resolution to the challenge. So when this professor said this, and I came home and announced it to my parents, they were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And I was like, well, I can't, this is the professor said, y'all always telling me to listen to the teacher. So this one time I'm gonna say we're gonna do it. So one of the reasons that he said to refrain from it was because he said that if you listen particularly at that time to the local news, it was this whole notion of either if it bleeds, it leads, or happy talk, filling in the space. There was really no substance involved in it. So if you think about the news, you think about social media, you even think about reality shows, right? I could do a whole section on how I feel about reality shows, and some of them, right? And so you think about reality shows or scripted reality shows, it's been so turned up, the level of drama and discourse, and so we've been conditioned over and over to go towards that, right? We like, oh, did you hear about what happened in so and so, or did you hear about and we don't really hear as much about positive things that happen, right? So, now you might have one or two news stories that are like human interest and like, oh, so and so got accepted to blah, blah, blah. But if we had more of those, I think our anxiety would be tamped down a bit, because we would understand that it's not all bad all the time. Right. And with the 24-hour news cycle, and then, politics and all that kind of formula is created to draw you in. So in order to heal yourself, you have to unplug from that, because you're constantly taking in negativity.
Yes.
If you quiet yourself and just listen to that inner voice, or listen to some positive music, or I always say go outside and just listen to the city, right? Listen to the sounds of the city. If you are somewhere where there's green space, go to green space. And even if it's like, cars honking or the people shuffling by or whatever, there's a sort of a rhythm and a heartbeat to all of that. And that can be very calming, right? And so part of healing ourselves is really listening to ourselves and connecting to the environment, right? The positive pieces of the environment. And so if you can do nothing else, I would say do that. Now, if you want to go to another level, go see a therapist, get a coach, do all of those things, but start with what you can do in the moment. And that is some deep breathing exercises, listening to the heartbeat of the city, or, if you're in, a more rural area, just listen to the sounds of your environment.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I a long time ago, me and a colleague, we used to take young people from the city and just to go upstate to camp and just men talk, like, and what I would say is, when we're gonna go visit mom, they're like, Mom, yeah, Mother Nature, like, she loves you too. Like, let's go see Mom. Like, she misses you too. Like, it just what it does when you get out of, because I'm hearing another common theme, even when you were talking about the psychology piece. A lot of this, and even the work that I do, is really talking about getting out of your comfort zone. Right?
That's right.
Getting out of your comfort zone, because that's when you really know what you're made out of. And it changes you a lot. It just really rewires your brain. Totally. Dr. Hill, I want to switch gears a little bit, because I'm one thing, you and I have the common denominator is education. I am a huge component of education. You're an academic consultant. You go to these schools. You were working in schools. You were a teacher. You were a counselor. Education has changed. And COVID really kind of changed it up a lot. I'm gonna
kinda.
yeah. Understatement of the year. And I'm gonna be speaking at this conference, Loren Hill Hurston conference. I forget what university. They invited me, and it's online, right? A lot of these things are online now. I think of Star Wars and other things where eventually we're going to get to the point where a hologram is going to pop up in your room. You don't got to go to the schools, but I've homeschooled my daughter. I never thought I would be doing that. And I guess, as someone that's been in and out, still kind of get, you're in and out literally in these scenarios as you're part of your profession. How do you see education now? Like, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Wow. So this is something that I'm always mindful of. And whether I'm coaching someone one-on-one or whether I'm speaking to administrators or people who are thinking about going into higher ed or even K through 12, because at one time I was the board chair for a charter school that was K through 12. So what we always need to be mindful of, but often miss the mark on, is that education is this ever-changing landscape, right? It is not static, it's dynamic. And you mentioned COVID, and COVID ended up, really exposing a lot of the cracks and fissures and deficits, if you will, and disparities, right? They were always there, but it's like, oh, let's put a little spackle on that, or let's not pay attention to it, or you'll hear these terms like, kick the can down the road. And so what ended up happening with COVID was it like warp speed brought together technology and teaching, yes. Right?
Yes.
So institutions that were already providing distance-based or distributed-based learning, they were all right?
Facts, yes.
However, institutions where you had, some faculty and administrator who were really slow to the race on it, we've been doing it for 100 years this way, so we'll keep doing it. Well, when COVID came, few things happened. Either those faculty, staff, or administrators they couldn't adjust, so they quit, resigned, etc. And some of the departments ended up folding if they weren't able to pivot. So this contributed to what you've heard as the Great Resignation, right?
That's right.
But sometimes it's okay to cull, right? I mean, I don't want to use that word in a mean way, but you gotta trim the fat. You have to think about what is going to be moving us forward. And, unless you're able to be innovative and able to be future thinking and forward thinking, it may not turn out so well for you. And that's any industry, right? Usually when I'm coaching people, or even if I'm talking to administrators, I say, look, y'all, higher ed is a business, right? And if you don't understand business administration, business operations, it's going to be a hard lesson for you.
Yeah. And, I'm hearing you, and it's like, it is all those kind of bullet points were seen on a macro level, just across the board as well, because it's the clash between the tech knowers and the tech confusers, and they're trying to like meet up somewhere in the middle. Because I saw it even too in certain instances in places where I was at, where you can tell who's up on it, who app creators, they know the terms, they know how to navigate and operate with technology, while others were like, I'm still typing like this, but I have other gifts and talents that I'm still able to give. But it was, you saw it across the board. It was just kind of like this sort of like, for lack of a better, like cleaning the house, who's there, who's not, what needs to be repositioned, thrown away, so to speak, or repolished. And I saw that a lot across the board.
Reimagined.
Yes.
And so I think that you bring up a good point between, the tech natives, right? And then the tech, like migrators, if you will. And so if you are willing and you can be agile, there's a place that I think that can meet in the middle, because it's not only impacting higher ed, right? We were watching an episode recently of 60 Minutes, and they were talking about New York and all of the empty office space. that is in New York, right? And it was interesting to hear, some of the executives hold to this notion of, people got to get back into the office. Well, people ain't trying to do that. Either it's remote, hybrid, or some people want to go in, and there's an argument to be made for being in person.
Right.
Only for those who are used to being in person, right? So if you to some people who've we've always worked remotely in that age demographic or what have you, then they're like, why do I need to go into the office? That's dumb, right? So you need to, as an administrator or a business owner or, a faculty, whatever, you need to figure it out, because you can plant your flag on, we all need to be in the classroom, listening to Professor Hill lecture for 2 hours. Or you can try to see how much of this really needs to be on campus in class, what could be remote, how do we get what we need, and how do we provide services to our, consumers.
Yeah. And, the more I talk about this and hear people, it's really just boils down to that word time, right? It's just, we pay for convenience. So now
Yes.
This has taken it to the next level where instead of, because people are excited at the fact that, because a lot of the work is getting to work, the getting dressed, the preparation, and if you got a long commute, if you cut that out,
right,
golly, the time that you get back, because a lot of people talk about quality of time, and much of that is taken away just with the commuting alone. So I think this is so important. But again, I'm going to shift, because as we always do in the Know Thy Shelf, we ask guests to bring something that comes out of their shelves. What do you got for us today, Dr. Hill?
Okay, I got something fun for you. It is the ampersand.
And I see you got something on the wall too, the same thing. Yeah.
Not only do I have it on the wall, I have it on my bookshelves.
Oh, yeah.
I have it on my desk.
That one's nice.
This is my paperweight. And so I love the ampersand, and the meaning behind it. I mean, it's the symbol for and, right? And the meaning for it, for me personally, is that so many times in life, as a Black woman, as we talked earlier about what would we tell little Loren, it was not and, it was you can do this or you can do that. And usually that was the same thing. It was like, mom and dad said, you can do this, you can take the trash out, and you can take the trash out, right? You didn't have a bunch of options, right? And so, and here's the way they did it. You can take the trash out now, or you can take the trash out now. And if you didn't get that, then you got it, right? And so many times in life, it was limited, right? There really weren't any options. It was, this is, thou shalt do this, and that's the end of that story. And as I, went through life and learned that there were so many options, you can do this, or you could do this, or how about flip that and say, you can do this and you can do this. So practically, how does that, shake down for grown Loren? Well, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Yep. I'm a clinical psychologist in the sunny state of California, even though it's been a little cold lately. I'm also, a coach. I do executive coaching. I coach people in higher ed. I help with nonprofits. I, do interior designing. I do this and this and this and this, right? So I may not be able to do this and this at the same time. Like literally, at 10 a.m., I can't be here and there. I haven't quite figured out how to do that quantum physics things where I'm in two places at the same time, but maybe we'll get to that,
The omnipresent.
hologram. Exactly. And so I really approach life with these ampersands always in my head about, maybe instead of saying you could do this or you could do that, you can do this and you can do that.
And let's just keep it real. If you're not ending nowadays, I don't know, because I call that multiple streams of income, because I'm an educator and a father and a world traveler and a coach and an entrepreneur and sometimes I'm a therapist to other people. Really, just so important, and I love that.
And I think that some people may say, I'm a hustler, right? Because I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. And it's not a negative connotation, in my opinion. Like I'm really working myself and others. In fact, I did a blog recently about get out of the grind, right? Because we are so used to the grind culture. But let me tell you, grinding will grind you into the ground. Yeah. And so you have to really, you got to get it going, right? But then hopefully what happens is you get to a point where, like I mentioned earlier, you have moved from, surviving to thriving. Yes. Because when you're in a state of thriving, you ain't grinding, right? It's flow, right? It's flow.
Yeah. And again, I did a workshop called Spiritual Economic Empowerment. And I said the number one thing, the irony of this is I'm not even talking about money. I'm talking about gaining time back. Time is the currency. If you got time to be creative, time to be with your family, time for that walk, time for the creativity, God, will that open up so many doors, because you get out of that rat race, which is cool. Sometimes I like the hustle and bustle, but I mean, I'm getting older, and it's like you also have to learn to step back, like in the theological world, we say you got to, retreat, not retreat in the sense that you lost, but you need to recharge the battery so you can go back to the battle of life. Dr. Hill, I believe you answered this already, but I always ask this question to my guests. Strong Black woman, freaking intelligent, you're an educator, you're a clinician. I'm seeing your light shining. There is a young Dr. Hill somewhere in this world who wants to follow your path. What's just one piece of advice you would give to that young person?
Wow. I would say to not go at it alone, right?
Yeah.
We always hear you can do it. And then, okay, well, who's going to help me? Right. So please reach out to someone and have a conversation about what support looks like. I'm always social support, professional support, academic support. You can find support in different buckets. It doesn't have to be the same person supporting you across those areas. So try to identify a person who gets you in your social network, right? They could be, I usually say, try to identify someone who's a couple of steps further than where you are, so that they can pour into you about, hey, take this class or go to this conference or sign up for that, or let's sit down and talk about some missteps that I had. Maybe you don't have to do it this way, or maybe here's somebody you can reach out to. I know this person, they could hook you up with whatever. So think about it in terms of who do I need to know in my social support, and that's defined as friend, family, loved ones, etc. Who do I need to find, in at my university or a university that's close by, because maybe there's nobody there, but there could be someone in a department that you're in. If you're in the school of psychology, sociology, theology, maybe they're not at that school, but they're at another school. You can email people. I love it when students email me for advice.
Oh, I love
and
it.
then think about somebody who's in the profession that you want to ultimately be in, right? Because you're not going to be a student forever, right? It may seem like you in school forever, but once you get out, the point is to step into the profession. And a lot of times what happens is that misstep of connecting with someone who's already in the profession. And years ago, that was part of my research is, what is the three-legged stool that will get you through? And that's social support, academic support, so that's someone at your institution, and then ultimately professional support, because you're going to move through these roles and then be in the profession. And the final link that can make sure that you get to the profession is connecting with someone who is in that area.
Yeah, I love it what you're saying, because, every time I speak to people, I see a little bit of me and them and vice versa. Because, when I was pursuing my doctorate and going up, I was always like, well, it was until after the fact, I would tell myself, God, I wish I had somebody to God, like everything that you said. I mean, shout out to Dr. Lundy. She was, so pivotal in helping me, and Tingmintz Alatunji, who's the son of Babatunde Alatunji, who's the famous percussionist that came from West Africa, Nigeria. Mm-hmm. They were all these mentors, meaning like you're saying, like mentors, like you need people who, if you want to do real estate, go to a realtor that's seasoned. If you want to be a teacher, connect with a professor who's on a tenure track. So there's a saying, if you can be what you see, so go to the places where you're seeing it. It makes sense. Dr. Hill, you mentioned all these good stuff about you, but if people want to connect with you, how can people reach out? Give us all your information and contact.
Yes, thank you for offering that. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Just type in you can Google my name, and it's spelled Loren, right? And last name is Hill, and you'll find me. And you can go to my website. My business is The Acclivity. So that is TheAcclivity.com.
Beautiful. Dr. Hill, like I said in the beginning, I'm so grateful. We could talk for hours. I think we got to have a part 2. But
I'd be happy to.
Oh, we should. And you already know, we got to build. There's a lot of work to do. We can talk off this, but I just want to say I'm honored. I'm humbled. I'm grateful that the Lord created you to be in this world to help us, because God knows we need you. We're grateful. As we always do in the Know Thyself podcast, we end with a quote. How fitting. This comes to us from an anonymous person, and it reads as such. Yeah. A good education can change anyone. A good teacher can change everything. Peace, family.
Mixtaper.